Hello, everyone. We have a wonderful panel today. My name is Shelley Harrison, and I'll be the moderator. And I have some phenomenal leaders that we have assembled to bring this topic to all of you. We are streaming live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. And the topic today is closing the gender gap. And I want to bring on all of our panelists, and you'll get to meet them in just a moment. They are very high top leaders in their industries, and here they are. So welcome to the broadcast. We're going to be about an hour, and I want to welcome all of you to the broadcast today. Thank you for being here, and we're going to go ahead and start with introductions, and I would love to start with Kristen McAllister. So Kristen, can you go ahead and introduce yourself? And if I could mention too, I'm sorry, Kristen, and we're going to find out, because that one thing that was really important is why you're participating on this panel today, especially for such an important topic.
Hi, Shelley, thank you so much. President of Cirrus Executives, and aside from how much I value you and Mary as partners and incredible leaders being asked to be on this network, I represent a network of thousands of executives. And it's interesting, when it started a few decades ago, maybe 15% of the group was female, and other diversity identifiers were even less. I look at it today in our in-person, our virtual events, our placements, we're closer to 1/3. And I think there's a number of dynamics going into influencing the discussion at who should be at the leadership table, and some great points for discussion today.
Oh, wonderful. And we're excited to hear from you, because I know you have such a robust network. So Kristen, welcome. Thank you for being here. And now we're going to go to Michael Corpiel. And Michael, if you could go ahead and introduce yourself. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Shelley, and thank you for the invitation to be a part of this live stream. I am very excited to be here. I am the president of Mercy San Juan Medical Center in Carmichael, Sacramento, California, and the president of the Sacramento Market for Dignity Health. I'm excited to be here for a couple of reasons. I'm impressed with the people that you have assembled on this panel. I really want to learn from them and get some ideas on how we can do a better job within our company. Closing the gender gap at Dignity Health is a very important initiative for us. Mm-hmm. And so anytime that we can share what we are doing and how successful we have been with other organizations and with other people, we want to make sure that we get that word out. So I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, and we're thrilled to have you, Michael, and thank you so much for being here. Most definitely. And Frank, we're going to have you go next.
Oh, yeah. So really grateful to be part of this astute panel. I got to thank Mary for thinking about me, reaching out and saying we would love you to participate in such a discussion. So I am the founder and managing partner of Accelerant Consulting. Our expertise is scaling and commercializing medical device suppliers in the acute care market. So my why, I had a list of whys, probably 20 reasons why I'm here, and I'll keep it real simple. It's for my daughter. It's for my wife. It's for being a role model to others out there on how we can close that gender gap, bring awareness. Under my business, I brought in a woman who has 50% of the company, and I did that on purpose because I want to be an example to other people in the medical device space.
Yeah, well, and welcome, Frank, and it's a pleasure to have you. And this is the first time we're meeting, well, not today, but we did meet specifically starting on this panel. So it's wonderful to have you in our community. Thank you for being here. And I am Shelley Harrison. I am your MC today and moderating this prestigious panel. And I wanted to start it with this. And I'm going to read this. And for those of you that know Singer sewing machines, so this is back in 1949, and it's Singer sewing, and it's from their manual. And it's advice for how to sew properly. And it says, prepare yourself mentally for sewing. Think about what you're going to do. Never approach sewing with a sigh or lackadaisically. Good results are difficult when indifference dominates. Never try to sew with a sink full of dirty dishes or beds unmade. When there are urgent housekeeping chores, do these first so that your mind is free. And I'm sorry, it's very small writing. So that your mind is free to enjoy your sewing. When you sew, make yourself as attractive as possible. Put on a clean dress. Keep a little bag of French chalk near your sewing machine to dust your fingers at intervals. If you are constantly fearful that a visitor might drop in or that your husband will come home and you will not look neatly put together, you will not enjoy your sewing. So that was 1949, and it's kind of fun to start with that. And we have some stats in regards to, CEOs for Fortune 500 companies. In the top leadership, we're only at 10% with women. So we have our allies here today. We're going to have a great conversation, and we'll have more stats that we'll share as we go along. I'd like to start with the first question, and we're going to start this off with Michael Corpio. And the first question that we have, Michael, is what are some of the ways that you have seen gender bias manifest itself in the workplace?
Thanks, Shelley, and thanks for letting me lead off. I work in the healthcare industry, and we are really a female-dominated industry. 75% of the people who work in healthcare are female, yet we have a tremendous gap in leadership because throughout healthcare, only 25% of the people who are in leadership positions are women. And so we need to make that difference. So my industry in particular has a long way to go to close that gap and to make that better. At Dignity Health, most of our hospitals throughout the United States were founded by women. Sisters of Mercy in my case, Dominican sisters and others, religious sisters were the founders of our hospitals. And so they are great role models for us to make sure that we are closing that gap and identifying leaders who potentially can help us lead us into the future. When we identify people or when we identify gaps, we take specific steps to make sure that in all of our organizations, we seek out people in our organizations that we can help to train, that we can help to promote, to put in those leadership positions. My hospital in particular, I have 7 executives on my staff, 5 of which are women. And I make an effort to make sure that when we have leadership positions open, that we seek out the best candidates for the job and make sure that we are interviewing a diverse candidate pool to make us successful and make the right choice for the job.
Oh, that's a wonderful answer. And thank you for sharing that, Michael. And I know you are dedicated to really supporting women and an ally. So next we are going to go to Kristen. So Kristen, same question. What are some of the ways that you have seen gender bias manifest itself in the workplace?
Thank you, Shelley. And I love that each of us comes from a very different place, different industries, different types of companies. And a lot of what I'm doing is talking with CEOs, business owners, top leaders, and we see a tendency of we want to be surrounded by like-minded people. We want to be surrounded by people who think like we do, act like we do the same things, are in the same common places. And how that often ends up is slanted towards one gender or another or certain affinities. And we lose that opportunity of diverse opinions, of opposing opinions. A lot of what we're doing is working with companies to put more opposing opinions and diverse opinions in that leadership level. And I spoke to a number of individuals in preparation for this, and a common thing that came up was something also happens with females in leadership roles. and I tend to be a little harder and really want to push others to excel and be leaders, and that can manifest itself in a lot of different ways. So just having these conversations and being aware of it, I think is the key in discussing how can we promote diversity of opinions in that. And I love, Michael, thank you. So I can only imagine the diversity of opinions you have around you in your leadership meetings based on who you've surrounded yourself with.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what I just realized when you were saying that is, Mary, I didn't have you introduce yourself. Did I?
That's okay. In keeping with
Well,
our topic, I was going to when it came my turn, I was going to introduce myself. Thank you, Shelley. I know that there was a lot on your mind. Would you like me to do it now?
Absolutely, please. And my apologies, Mary. Yeah.
Okay.
Please introduce yourself.
All right. Okay. So my name is Mary Sadat, and I am the founder of Sadat and Associates. My life in healthcare started back in 1985, and that was post my graduate studies at Charter Hospital of Long Beach, and it's been a 40-year career in the healthcare arena. And going back to what Michael said about 75% of women are in healthcare, I was one of the very, very few in the healthcare arena to actually get to the VP level and move on into the C-suite. And Michael, just so you know, today the stat said 76%. So we went 1% up as of this morning that I checked. Unless ChatGPT wanted to give me the wrong statistics. So yes, and my why is, gosh, how much time do you have? But the biggest why that I have, Shelley, is the fact that, one of my loves and my passions is to mentor younger women that are trying to make it into, break the glass ceiling, because it still exists. It still exists. And it's alive and well. And I think that these kinds of conversations hopefully will enable them to navigate the arena effectively. From those of us that have had to navigate it, we continue to navigate it. It has not stopped, even as consultant. And I'm particularly interested, obviously, in the healthcare arena, because my why is, when we've got 75 or 76% in the healthcare arena, obviously, more women would be wonderful to be in leadership positions, to be able to lead other women. And that's my why. Hopefully I answered the question.
You absolutely did. Thank you, Mary. And while we're with you right now, and then we'll go to Frank. So the question: what are some of the ways that you have seen gender bias manifest itself in the workplace?
Again, how much time do you have? So it's been challenging throughout my career. However, what I can say at the present moment, compared to, let's say, the 90s, when, what was my first VP job, is that there are allies like the Franks and the Michaels of the world. More of them are in the forefront. And the other thing is that the women are more supportive of women. So we have a tribe that we can go to at the present moment. And I highly always encourage that people do that so that we can navigate that. I mean, just as of, a month ago, I had to reach out to Frank about a situation, and we were able to navigate and problem solve together. So I just don't want us to think that it's not there and shove it under the carpet, where it is. But the key is how to navigate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Mary. And again, I apologize that I didn't have you introduce yourself. Of all people, I just want to mention that Mary, brought this group together. So we really appreciate that, Mary. And then now we're going to go to Frank. So Frank, same question. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, you don't have to repeat it, Shelley.
Okay.
I've seen it too many times. We talk about healthcare, and obviously Michael's on the provider side. So specifically, I'm on the supplier side, where we have sales reps, we have medical device companies. And when I moved into management in early 2000s, I recall not having one woman in the sales organization. We had no women in leadership. We had one that was starting to make her way through the enterprise accounts, but she wasn't getting any support. So I felt there was a need to add women salespeople to the West Coast, which I did. That was scrutinized by leadership, but that opened the door for others to start moving into manage specific business units, different accounts, and eventually move into enterprise and leadership roles. By no means am I taking credit for opening those doors. I was just trying to be an advocate, and I just, would squarely look at anybody I was interviewing and just say the best person's going to win the position. And it happened to be two people in the state of California. And, I've witnessed it through other organizations. I see it in the supplier side on the specifically on national accounts, which is a major concern because under my firm, I want to bring in more women and I just can't find them that have this expertise in this area on the supplier side. So it's been a struggle for our organization. And when I brought Nancy onto as the business owner and said, hey, we're going to run this business together, help cultivate and edify others out there that women in this particular area of healthcare can thrive and start to climb the ladder. So,
yeah. Well, thank you, Frank, for your response. And I just want to remind those that are watching and maybe when they're rewatching this at a later time, we are talking about closing the gender gap. And this is a phenomenal group of panelists, and we're going through different questions, and we really want to dive a little bit deep into the topic. And we are going to be doing this for another, we'll go through 1 o'clock, and we have some great questions to ask our panelists. So again, we want to thank you for watching. We're streaming live on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook on multiple platforms. So, we want to make sure that you share this out. If you have questions for our panelists, please feel free to put those in the chat, and we'll certainly try our best to get those on screen. So the next question that I'm going to go to, and this one we'll start with Michael. What are some of the things that you have done personally to challenge gender bias?
That's a great question, Shelley. I was raised in a house with 2 other brothers and 2 sisters, and from the very beginning, my parents had no gender bias because their expectation was that all of the boys in the household knew how to. Going back to your original reading that you had. We all had to learn how to sew. We all had to learn how to do our laundry. We all learned how to cook. My sisters learned how to change the oil in the car and change the tire in the car. And the expectation was you have a job to do, and we don't care whether you're a boy or a girl, you're going to get it done. Yeah. And so right from the very beginning, I was raised in an environment of that type of mentality. And I think that's helped me along, and it's allowed me to see things in my job and in my work where there is a bias and where we can make differences. And so what we have done in my organization is we have made it very purposeful to identify people right from the very beginning who are potential leaders, especially women, because several of our values are within Common Spirit, Health, and Dignity are inclusion. is to make sure that all people are represented not only from our workforce, but in our patients. And so identify people early to give them an opportunity to learn how to be leaders, to make sure that there is pay equity across the board, regardless of gender, and give people an opportunity and encourage people to apply for positions when they become available. Most of the time we see a great gender gap within our medical staff because many physicians historically are men. But as more and more women go into medical school, and I think now more women are in medical school than men, we are seeing and encouraging women physicians to take those leadership roles. So a little bit encouragement, a little bit of identifying that when we have a position open, we have a diverse group of people who are interviewing for the candidates so that we can hear from all different sides of the story so that we can pick, like Frank said, the best candidate for the job.
Yeah, and to know that it started at a very early age, that was a wonderful foundation that your parents set for you and your brothers and sisters. That's
I was
awesome.
very fortunate.
Very fortunate. Yeah. Thank you, Michael. And then, Kristen, the same question. Would you like me to repeat the question?
I understand. I think Michael just painted such a picture in all of our minds where we go back to where did we learn how to be equal. And I thought, I sewed my own clothes and I changed my own oil. And I love that we can start not just in the workplace, but in our homes. And I look back at as in what I do in working with business leaders is helping them focus on, let's qualify people based on how they think versus how they look. We're trying to move the discussion to what Michael said is, how do we identify those future leaders? How are we going to measure that? How are we identifying skill, potential, a diversity of opinion? And that naturally is going to promote the diversity that we're looking for in leadership roles. And I think about right now, it's starting to come up more and more as the concept of gender itself is no longer binary. The more we can get a challenging of opinions, including challenging of opinions of what is gender, who do we need in our company from backgrounds, from experiences, from perspectives. Let's start with painting that profile first of what do we need, and then we can decide who we need and how to measure that from their skill sets and, as Michael alluded to, that potential for leadership.
That's a great response. Thank you so much, Kristen. All right, and then now we're going to go to Frank. So Frank, would you like me to repeat the question?
Sure.
Okay. So what are some of the things that you have done personally to challenge gender bias?
I think of my daughter, who's 17, who's an entrepreneur, who fast-tracked high school, started college when most people were looking forward to 4 years in high school. And she's very eclectic in where she's writing for a major publication. She's modeling, she's producing content, she does copyright book. And what I would say to that is, with my daughter on her pathway and being in rooms with, men that make inappropriate comments or jokes or fall into those stereotypes, I've just learned I don't have time for it, to be honest with you. I don't want to hear it, nor do I have time for it, nor do I want to entertain it. And I don't feel uncomfortable from a sensitive perspective. I'm just like, grow up. And I recognize, is it something unconscious with people? Are they fear driven? Are they feeling threatened? And what I've learned is a lot of it is just bringing awareness. I just don't think anybody's called them out. These are just habits that are rooted with a lot of male behavior. And now I got to sit there and think, okay, as my daughter, grows in life, right? And she's confronted with these situations, how is she going to handle them? Does she got to get some thick skin and try to fit in with the male culture? Or can she pay their own way and have confidence in realizing she can speak her mind? And so, I've been married for 27 plus years. And when I got married, my wife was in public relations and she was very entrepreneurial, and, she's created businesses, and I support that. I love that. I want someone who's active. So for me, it's natural. I don't know where it came from. I probably didn't have the best upbringing. I had a father from, more on the Italian side, and a mother that was more American. And I saw how men can dominate. And I think when I, got married, I wanted more of a partner, because I never viewed it as not being equal. There's a lot said, and I'm not going to get into, difference between male and female and the rib and the whole concept when you go down the biblical path, but we are equal because it comes from the midsection of how we were created. And so I just don't tolerate it. I just don't put myself in that setting, unfortunately. And maybe I need to be in that setting so I can call people out. I don't know. I'll figure that out as I go through life.
Yeah. No, thank you so much. And I love the way that you honor your daughter and support your wife, being that, she's an entrepreneur. And I have to say that my husband is the same way. And a few of you know my husband. And I'm just so, thankful that he is so supportive of my company and what I do day in and day out. So thank you for sharing, Frank. All right. So now we're going to go to Mary. And Mary, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thank you, Shelley. So, my upbringing was by a physician dad who was way ahead of his time. And I guess I was the son he never had because I was number 4. And so in essence, I really didn't even think about the fact that I was not, as capable as any boy or man. And so I honestly, was very, very blessed with a father that was extremely progressive, and, it just wasn't an issue in the home at all, him having 4 daughters. To answer your question about gender bias, I think that kind of like touched on that a bit. However, I think that it's just a matter of facing reality, knowing that it's there, really, really surrounding oneself with individuals that do not have the gender bias, understanding that there's a lot of paradigms in terms of mindset of how people were raised, how they grew up, what path they choose, and how they want to be in the world of work. And the navigation of it is I think the art and the science that really has to happen.
Yes, most definitely. And thank you, Mary, for sharing your feedback. So now we're going to go to the next question. Does anybody have anything specific that's kind of burning in them where they want to share? And this could just be random. If anybody wants to share anything specifically that you're just feeling moved to share right now. Okay, well, I think we're good. All right. Well, I guess we must have good questions, right, that we're getting the answers to. All right. So the next question, and again, this is going to go back to Michael again. What advice would you give to men who want to be allies to women in the workplace?
Thanks, Shelley. I think that there's a couple of things that I would give advice that I would give to men in the workplace. The first of which is to educate themselves, understand where their own biases are so that they can learn for themselves where they have some biases. I know that throughout the years, I have been told that I have some bias, and oftentimes it takes me back a minute and say, well, wait a minute, I don't have that bias. But once I begin to understand some of my actions, some of my words, I begin to realize that, yeah, I can understand why people might have that impression of me. And so it has to be a reflective thing. If you really want to become better as a leader, if you want to become better as a person, you really have to do some self-inspection about where you can improve and how you can overcome the biases that you have. That feedback has been incredibly important to me, and people, men really need to be open to understand and where their biases might be. And so to become educated about gender bias and where it might be playing out within their workplace, to listen intently to some of the people within the organization or some other people even outside of the organization, so that they can get feedback about where there might be some improvements that can be made within this space. And then, finally, to take risks. Once you identify some people who can bring a different view to the table that you have within your organization, to take some risks with people and be committed to their success, so that once you make that selection and identify someone that you want to promote that can bring a different point of view to your organizational leadership, to be committed to their success, allow them to fail, and to be open to what they bring to the table, because ultimately that diversity and that different voice is going to make the organization stronger and better and more competitive in the workplace. And so those are some of the things that I would tell men in the future, really to provide them some feedback on how to get better.
That's wonderful. And thank you, Michael. And this is exactly why we have this phenomenal panel. And we're going to keep going. So, Kristen, I'm going to pose that same question to you. Would you like me to repeat it?
Yeah, I think let's repeat it and really help reinforce Michael's comments as well.
Okay. So what advice would you give to men who want to be allies to women in the workplace? And knowing that you have a huge network of CEOs and executives.
I think this is such an important question from the perspective of it's not just men and women and allies, and it's ourselves as well, and holding ourselves accountable for what we are doing or not doing. And I use that from the perspective of I interview a lot of females for leadership roles, and a common thing that comes up is confidence. So you should be a CEO, and I get the reaction of, oh no, I do not see myself. There is absolutely no way. And so having the confidence in ourselves, as well as allies in the workplace, whether they are male or female, to encourage us to raise our hand. And this is anyone in the workplace. Raise our hand, and if we don't raise our hand, ask the question of everyone. Do you want to be considered for leadership? Do you see yourself as one day manage a team? Do you want to have a voice at the table? And it's not as much the case that we're going to raise our hand and be jumping up and down like a pogo stick anymore. You as top leaders need to go out and ask everyone that same question and promote the confidence and encourage to then say yes or an honest opinion of no. And I understand it's a little contrarian of let's look at ourselves first, right? That gives others like Michael and Frank, they're there encouraging us. We've got to take that step. It might be off a cliff. It might be into something, pushing ourselves, Mary's favorite talk, pushing ourselves out of our comfort zones. Because there are some incredible allies out there who want to see us all exceed, regardless of the diversity that we're coming from. And we've got to be the ones to say yes and raise our hand.
Yes. And we have two of the finest allies with us today in Michael and Frank. So I just want to put that out there. Thank you, Kristen, for answering that. And we're going to go next to Frank. And Frank, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, not needed.
Okay.
I might get yelled at for this one, but I don't believe in being politically correct. I really don't. I believe in being honest and asking people what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. You know, the person that's sometimes politically correct is the one trying to just get through the moment, the conversation, the day, and you don't know where they really stand because they're going through those motions. It's like, you know, I tell my children, if anybody ever attacks you, just ask them if they're okay. And why would, you know, it's a simple question, because if you attack back, now they've just justified their behavior. And so if you're going to have empowering communication and honesty, it has to be on both sides. You know, I've always been intrigued by, and I should probably share with the group, my background. I mean, I'm a clinical psychologist by trade. I left the industry, got in medical devices. I did some extensive research back in the day on stigma and dualism. But what I would say is, I don't know why sometimes people have the need to dominate another human being, right? We're individuals. We should stand on our own, and we should be supportive, and we should be attentive listeners to what's being communicated. And so I'm a big advocate of that. And I think if more people were just honest versus attacking and trying to defend and rationalize their behavior, because sometimes people just aren't okay. They're having a bad day. Maybe something happened. We don't know. But I think it calls people to the table. And most people, I would like to think, are very good souls. So I think a simple question can really humble them in a very good way. And then now you can have open dialogue.
Yeah. Great response, Frank. Thank you. Okay. And then Mary, would you like me to repeat the question?
I am totally good. Thank you. What brilliant answers from our team here. Wow. So I just wrote down a few things, you know, which really resonated for me. And it goes back to emotional intelligence, right? So the question is, what advice for men in the workplace? I think it goes both ways, and also what advice for women in the workplace as well, because at the end of the day, we're trying to close the gender gap. So I think that what everybody touched on, which I totally agree, and it resonates for me, is that we need to take a look at ourselves, our own biases, where we are. And you know, what kind of biases are now being presented? I present this to our viewers as you watch this. I mean, does it trigger you from the perspective of, oh my God, here's another feminist kind of thing, or, you know, leave us alone, or, you know, it's all good, or just going back to your sewing example. So I think that it's some emotional intelligence questions that need to be asked of ourselves to see where we're coming from. Is this something that to be allies, to close the gender gap? Is it something that's even important to us? And why is it important to us? I mean, I go back to the fact that I'm a healthcare person. So obviously 75% being women in healthcare, I think that we should take a really, if we are in the healthcare industry, a really important deep dive into our own thinking of why would we, you know, hire only senior executives that, or consultants or advisors that are men, when 75% of our workforce are women. So it just, you know, it's all those kinds of deep questions. And I think someone said, take risks. Who was it on our panel who said take risks? Was it Frank?
No,
was it Michael? Was it Kristen? Some brilliant soul here said take Michael. He said take risks. And I think that at the end of the day, because of our own biases, men and women, and because of where we come from internally, as Frank addressed, is that we may just be not comfortable to take risks and come out of our comfort zone. It's a lot easier sometimes to see a man on the other side of the conference table advising or being in a leadership position rather than a woman, only because that's what we're used to. So that is taking a risk if that is where we're coming from, and vice versa, by the way. If we're a woman that just wants to hire women, and we're on the other side of the conference table, we just want to see women, then we have to challenge ourselves to take a risk as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Shelley, if I can follow up with that, Mary, I love your comments, as Frank, you as well. I learned too late in my career the importance of emotional intelligence and how much that is needed in a leadership position. And as you were talking, Mary, I was thinking about, taking risks, and it's I think it's less about, and I think you put it correctly, it's less about taking risks and really more about getting outside of your own comfort zone. And we have proven in medicine that people heal better when they are being treated by people that they can relate to, that look like them. And so that's why we have such an emphasis in bringing in minorities and people of color into healthcare to take care of the people that we serve. And I think it's the same thing as in leadership. In healthcare, like I said, 75% of the people are women. We have a very low and one of the lowest turnover rates in our industry. And I think it in large part is because we have about 50% of our leadership are women. And so they can relate better to the people that they're working with. And there is that diversity that comes forward because of that. And what I have found is that the more I get outside of my comfort zone becomes my comfort zone. And so I get more comfortable with people of different backgrounds around the table that can share the ideas and bring a better result to my organization.
Oh, and that's a great follow-up response, Michael. And kudos to you, because you had mentioned that you learned late in your career about emotional intelligence, and not many CEOs and executives of large organizations would share that. So thank you for being very transparent. We appreciate that. Yeah. Okay, so the next question: how can we create a culture of accountability for gender bias? So, Michael, I'm going to put that question out to you, and I know you just replied to the last one.
Yeah, I think it goes back to a couple of things that we have said. It has to be a part of our organization, and has to be ingrained in our organization. And so by developing educational programs to help to address the issues, I think Frank mentioned it earlier, we have to talk about these issues. We can't just put them under the table or throw them under the rug. We have to create forums for people to talk about these things and to learn about them and become educated. And once we educate our staff and they recognize that we value the diversity, we value everyone who comes to the table, then I think that those gender biases will begin to dissolve and go away. So I think it's really important to educate it, but also to promote it and to celebrate it. And so whenever we have someone who is a female who moves into a leadership position, to recognize it and to celebrate it. And when they have successes, and when there are things that they do that are different ideas or successful ideas, to have that celebration and to celebrate who they are as leaders, who they are as people, and the diversity that they bring to the table. Those celebration begins to make it more comfortable to people to work in your organization, and to break down and to create that culture of accountability around gender.
Great response, Michael. And for those of you that just tuned in or following along, we are talking about closing the gender gap, and we're going to go to Kristen now. And would you like me to read the question again, Kristen?
I'm good.
Okay.
I keep going back to that sewing example because you did not tell us you were going to use it. And my mind wanted to dissect, where is she going with this?
Yeah.
And there were words that were coming out like focus and purposeful and tune out the noise. You've got a needle coming down, you're sewing stuff.
Yeah.
Right? The more, when you look at culture of accountability, the more we're purposeful, we're focusing on it and questioning, what are we focusing on? What are we being purposeful for? And what are we looking to achieve? So from someone who does nothing but interview people for a living, I'm always looking at that from the lens of asking questions, of gathering information. And rather than asking the question of, what are you doing to promote females in the workplace? What are you doing to promote diversity? Looking at questions of, what are you doing to get a diverse set of opinions? How do you evaluate skills and potential in leadership? What types of leaders are you looking for? Tell me about the last time your team disagreed with each other and how they came to a conclusion. You start to see the underlying themes. You can see a mindset of openness, or maybe it's not so open and you're seeing all vanilla there and a track record. And then you decide, do I want to be part of this? I want to affect change in here and bring some diverse opinions, or no, this isn't the place for me. So just decide, what are we looking to achieve as individuals, and then as part of a team and as part of an organization. So I had some very different takeaways from your sewing example. Thank you for setting that up. Very much.
Oh, absolutely. And I kind of wanted to do that. And you know, I have to say, my mother-in-law is a master sewer, bless her heart. She's in her 90s. So it really had kind of a special place in my heart. But she's a wonderful woman. But the sewing example was purposeful because of this, you know, this conversation. And it really made me realize, you know, as women, and, you know, we have our allies here today, you know, we know where our place is, but we also want to be confident and be able to, you know, play and be at the table. So thank you, Kristen, for your response, because it's, you know, you have a lot of people that you have in your network, and you know, as far as the perspectives, you definitely have some great information to, you know, to share for this panel. All right, so now we're going to go to Frank. And Frank, do you need me to go ahead and read the question again?
No, we're good to go, Shelley.
Okay, all right.
You know, I think it's an action on society. We're gonna have discussions. We need to be edified, but it's action needs to be applied. And I think it starts with the individual. You know, the world's changed. You know, we talked about where we were, 30, 40 years ago with Fortune 500 companies and how that still needs to grow. Those numbers aren't strong, but we do see other industries very strong. But as a person, it's like no different than telling someone to get healthy. Well, you got to start with yourself, and then be a leader, be an example, and let others see that, so we can have action on society, and then that can be incorporated in our workplace and our daily life, because it falls into what we call role theory. So until we start to self-actualize ourselves and want to learn and grow, it's very hard to change. But if we can apply education with good dialogue, and that can morph into action, I think we're moving down the right path. And that's what we need.
Yeah, total agreement. Total agreement. Thank you, Frank. And then Mary will ask you that same question. Do you need me to repeat the question for you?
Sure. I would count to two that Kristen said because of the delay thing. 1, 2. Okay. This was our prior thing, just a kind of diversion of the delay in our broadcast. So culture of accountability, let's not regulate it. You know, I find it very offensive when people say you have to have X number of people on your boards, X, you know, and it's a state of whatever that's regulating it. I really don't think that really gets us to where we want to go. I'm hoping that it will be more in terms of consciousness raising, forums like this, wonderful allies like Frank and Michael, and, you know, having, as Frank stated, to make absolutely certain that we self-actualize ourselves first, be it men or women, because, you know, gender bias can be either way. And we want to close the gap with actualization rather than, you know, and raising of consciousness rather than any regulations. Because regulations are temporary and band-aids, and we saw that actually in several arenas, and they just don't last and they don't move the needle on closing the gender gap.
Yeah. Thank you, Mary. And I know that we have about 9 minutes left for the broadcast. And one question that I want to ask each of you that I think it's really, you know, it's in alignment with what we're talking about today. And I want you to follow it up with how people can reach you. The question, you know, for the remaining time that we have is, what are you hopeful for? You know, in participating in, you know, finding out that we were going to be having this topic, what are you hopeful for to see, you know, knowing that a lot of eyes will be on this? We're going to share it out with, you know, we're already sharing it out to about 30,000 on, you know, streaming live, and, you know, depending on how many people will watch this after the fact. But I'd really love to know, you know, what are you hopeful for by participating on this panel as it relates to closing the gender gap? And we're going to start with Michael, and then also if each of you could provide your, you know, contact information, a way that people can reach out to you, and then, you know, we'll take it from there. So Michael, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Shelley. I'm really hopeful that we just provide a little bit of comfort for people to begin the conversation within themselves and within their organization. I have obviously, like Frank, I've been married for 38 years, and my wife has been extremely successful and supportive of me and what I've been able to do. She's one of the smartest people I've ever met, and so I'm very fortunate in that way. I have a daughter who is very successful in her career, a daughter-in-law who's an attorney in the Los Angeles area, and 2 brand new granddaughters, who I want to have the opportunity to be successful and to grow up in a world where they can be successful. For me, the future will be that there is that diversity of people across leadership. I'm very much committed to developing new leaders and leaders of diverse backgrounds. And so I'm very hopeful for the future. I'm glad to work for a company that supports diversity and allows me to do it as well. In the Sacramento market, we have 5 hospitals. 4 of our hospital presidents are women, and my boss is a woman. And so, we believe that that's a ticket to success. And I would like to see that continue in the future, so that we can find people of great leadership, of great talent in leadership positions that can lead our industry and our company into the future. And I hope that this dialogue among the people that we have here really gives people a level of comfort that they too can get outside of their comfort zone to make a difference in their companies.
Absolutely, Michael. And how would you like them to reach out to you if they'd like to
Sure, they can give in my email, and it's my name, michael.corpiel@commonspirit.org.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Michael. And I just want to give a shout out. We had John Dade, who Mary and I both know. Great show on timely topic. Thanks for all your insight. Cheers. Thank you, John. We want to thank you for tuning in there and sharing your feedback. Thank you. All right. And so, Kristen, now I'm going to go to you in terms of that question. And do you need me to repeat the question, or are you comfortable with it?
I'm comfortable, especially since Michael just set it up, took everything that I am now a follower of Michael in so many ways, and it's shifting the conversation from how do we promote this, how do we create women's events, how do we do that, shift the conversation, as Mary said, away from trying to hit stats or numbers to how do we create programs for diversity and equality, and that's equality of opinions being heard at the table. And even at that leadership table, the board table, backgrounds of HR and finance and this and healthcare industry and finance industry, the more opinions that we can have, and sometimes opposing opinions that we can have, our businesses and our lives are going to be better for it. So the more opportunity that we can level set that playing field of what are we looking for, and being honest and clear on that versus going to the comfort zone of, I want people who will agree with me and say that I'm the absolute best ever and will feed my ego, to I want to be challenged, I want to be told I'm wrong, and I need a diverse set of people to do that. And that really is my hope.
Oh, thank you, Kristen. And now, how can people get a hold of you? How would you like them to reach out to you?
If you just Google Kristen McAllister, Serious Executives on LinkedIn, any number of opportunities to get a hold of me on LinkedIn, through our website. I don't think that anyone would be able to spell out the entire email. So just Kristen McAllister, Serious Executives.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Kristen. All right. And then Frank, we're going to go to you. And do I need to repeat it, or are you good?
No, Shelley, I'm just hopeful that people realize it's an issue. Why am I in this panel? Honestly, I don't know. Mary asked me. I'm no credible source. I'm human just like everybody else. I'm not perfect. I'm learning myself. I'm learning from our panel. I'm learning from everything. But I'm willing to jump into any situation and have a candid discussion, right? And hopefully people get inspired to do the same and not avoid the topic and just share your thoughts and beliefs. So I'm hopeful for that.
Yeah.
And you can get hold of me. You can look me up on LinkedIn, my website, Accelerant Consulting. It's right here, my name. So if you want to know how to spell it, it's EXCELERANT consulting.com. There's an info tab that would come right to me. Or you can just use F.Rapullo at accelerantconsulting.com. But I can put it here, and would it help if I just put in the comments?
Sure, you could. Yeah, it'll go right to LinkedIn. And it's also behind you too.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Yeah, you could put it in the comments. So if any of you would like to put your information in the comments, and we'll make sure that it's in the show notes as well. But thank you, Frank, for sharing that feedback and what you're hopeful for. And Mary, we're going to go to you now. And do you feel comfortable with the question, or would you like me to repeat it?
Yes. Thank you, Shelley. I am really hopeful, actually, because the young ladies that I work with, and mentor as part of, my paying it back into the world of work with females, they're not experiencing a lot of what we have been talking about. And I'm talking about, I never get the Gen Z and the millennials and all that, so I'm not going to label them. I mean, 30 plus years, in their 20s, in their 30s. I think that they are experiencing some differences. So I'm very, very hopeful as to the shifts that are happening. And a lot of it has to do with going back to what Michael said. Some of their male colleagues have been raised by single moms. They're because of the divorce factor that's been occurring. And those single moms are very powerful women, some of them, and are strong women, working women. So going back to your sewing thing, a big shift has happened. And so I am extremely, extremely hopeful. And I think that conversations like this of being authentic and just being truthful about how it is, I think are extremely helpful rather than not wanting to talk about the topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mary, can you share with our audience how people can reach out to you?
Mary at sadat.associates.com or on LinkedIn. Either work. So we'll look forward to connecting with anyone.
Oh, wonderful. And, for those of you who are watching or who will be watching the replay, you might want to take a picture of this or a screenshot where you have everybody's name. And I encourage you to definitely use LinkedIn to connect with all of them. And that does conclude the questions that we have. And I have a parting comment that I want to read in just a moment. However, I want to thank each of you. I am so thankful that we brought this panel together today. It's a very important topic. I grew up in the banking industry, and in banking, when I was 19, it was predominantly men, and I had a lot of allies then. And when I look back and I think, gosh, I had a lot of mentors and a lot of them were men. So I really appreciate the feedback that, each of you gave today. And it just goes to show that we're making progress. And, Kristen, thank you for participating. Frank, thank you. Michael Corpiel, thank you so much. And Mary, thank you. You brought the idea to the table. And here we are. We're wrapping up. Any parting comments that any of you want to make before I read our final comment for this program?
Just thank you, Shelley, for allowing us to have this topic and this forum to do this. I hope it was beneficial. I can also be found on LinkedIn, but I'm really excited about having this live streamed and having the topic out there for us to debate. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. All right. Anybody else want to just closing comments or anything that you want to mention? Okay. All right. So here we go. So in a world where equality should be the norm, let's shock the status quo by closing the gender gap for good. Together, we can rewrite the narrative and create a future where everyone has an equal opportunity to shine. Stay inspired, stay empowered, and let's make history. So again, thank you all for being here. We want to thank our audience for tuning in. We were streaming live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook, and you can find this broadcast on any of those platforms. And again, my name is Shelley Harrison. I was your moderator today. And again, we want to thank our prestigious panelists. I was so amazed by all four of you today. And it was just like, gosh, I had so much excitement just because we know we picked the right people for this panel. And again, thank you. Thank you for watching. We want to wish everyone a wonderful, rest of the day, and go out and let's close that gap. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shelley.
Thank you, Shelley.